Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week I'm going to look a little bit at the idea of abstraction and including abstraction into art. I'm going to focus more on landscape painting, specifically watercolor landscape painting, because that's the sort of thing I do. But I guess these ideas are applicable to other media and other subject matter. It doesn't just have to be landscapes, I guess. So the idea, this word abstract, and when people combine it with abstract and art, I think a lot of people think of this type of thing that you can see on screen. I don't disagree. You could describe this as abstract art, this Jackson Pollock painting, but I think a better label for this would be abstract non-representational art. Maybe I'm just being sort of nitpicking here, but I think it's important to say that you can introduce abstraction into your painting, and that does not mean that it becomes non-representational art. It can be both representational and abstract at the same time. Abstraction is a sort of it's not a binary thing. It's not all or nothing. You can add a little bit of abstraction. You can add a lot of abstraction into your art. It's like adding salt to your food. You can add just a tiny pinch, or you can add quite a bit. You can have representational art, and it can be also quite abstract. That's the point I'm trying to make, I think. So for me, the first abstract painting that I remember seeing was this one. So it wasn't Jackson Pollock or any other abstract expressionist or anything. It was this painting. And it made a big impression on me, pun intended. It is an abstract painting, or at least it's a painting that includes some abstraction, specifically in the background. So we sort of understand what's going on here. It's a river, or it's a river that's opening out into the sea. The sun is rising, and it's a sort of industrial landscape. So in the foreground we have a few boats, small boats with some people. There's maybe a larger ship, sailing ship in the background. We have some chimneys with smoke belching out. I say it's a sort of industrial harbour landscape or seascape. The background is abstract. It is quite abstract. And what I mean when I say abstract is it's lacking details, and we have to interpret things a little bit. Non-abstract art is very detailed. Something like photorealism to me is non-abstract art. You're usually in no doubt what is happening because the artist gives you so much information that it's easy to see what's happening, usually. But with this abstraction, the artist isn't giving you as much information. There's fewer details. So you, me, as the viewers, we have to interpret things a bit more and try to understand what's happening. So that to me is what abstraction is. So why would you use abstraction maybe? Well, one thing in this example, and this is what I think Monet was doing here, Monet really was kind of a naturalistic painter in some ways. He was trying to capture the way the sunlight interacted with the landscape that he was painting. So what happens when you have a misty, hazy morning or an industrial sort of landscape with lots of smoke and mist and things? You don't see all of the details. You maybe you can guess at the big shapes and things, but you can't see all the little details. So that's really what Monet was trying to capture here. And that's one way that you can use abstraction, is to try and capture the actual atmospheric conditions, the natural atmospheric conditions. Monet wasn't, of course, the only artist to ever do this. Another example is Turner, the English landscape and seascape artist. He often used similar sort of techniques. Of course, he was before Claude Monet. He was long before Impressionism, long before modern art came along. But he was using this sort of abstraction to give the feeling of atmospheric conditions. For me, I also use abstraction in my little watercolor landscapes, but maybe not the same way that, say, Turner and Monet were doing it. I'm less concerned with naturalism. I'm not trying to reproduce the natural world as such. I'm using abstraction more as an aesthetic thing, really. And also, I like the idea of the viewer having to do a bit more work to interpret things. Some viewers, of course, don't like that and they'll just walk away. That's fine. I'm not trying to please everybody. I'm not trying to please anybody, really. If people like my art, that's great, but I don't care whether they do or not. So I'm definitely not trying to give them so much detail that it's easy to understand. I want the viewer to interpret what they're seeing. So I'll use things like wet in wet painting. For example, the sort of trees or the hedges in the background along the horizon line. It's just painted wet in wet. And as the paint spreads out, it maybe, for some people, creates a sort of an impression of trees or hedges in the distance. The sky is the same. I've used a bit of sepia and some French ultramarine blue. I haven't actually painted a sky. I've just made these marks on the paper, but again, you could interpret that as a sky with clouds and things. So for me, what I'm trying to say is it's two things really. It's sort of aesthetics. I like this aesthetic more than sort of photorealism, which I really don't enjoy. And then the other thing is I like the idea of kind of getting the viewer to do a bit of work as well and to interpret things rather than spoon feeding them. I like that idea that the viewer might see something that's completely different to what I thought I was painting. I kind of like that idea. And as I say, not everybody does. Some people want everything to be spelt out in extreme detail so that there's no interpretation, no confusion or anything like that. But I like a bit of confusion and interpretation and things. So introducing abstraction, you can do it for different reasons. Monet, Turner did it for more sort of naturalistic reasons. I'm doing it for more artistic reasons or aesthetic reasons. There are different ways or different reasons why you might use abstraction, and very often it can involve just simplification, removing details, which then requires the viewer to do a bit more work. Anyway, that's my ideas about abstraction and including abstraction into your artwork. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching and listening. Hopefully see you again in 2 weeks' time.